There's a question which is asked. We say in the morning prayers, "Mimitzrayim gialtonu," from Egypt you redeemed us. "Umibeis avoda b'tisonu," and from the house of bondage you freed us. The two expressions, we were redeemed from Egypt, Mimitzrayim gialtonu, which is referred to as Geula. Geula is redemption. Beis avoda b'tisonu, and from the house of bondage we were freed, we were redeemed. The Midrash tells us that the last 10 months of the last 210th year, this is when we experienced and we witnessed the 10 plagues. Each plague was a certain period of time, and there was a month difference from plague to plague. So if you have 10 plagues, it's 10 months. But although the bondage ceased to be when the plague started, the first plague started, nevertheless, we were still in bondage. We were still enslaved. Although there was no physical work and our activity was not limited with freedom of movement, but in terms of our spiritual systems, we were totally shut down. Our systems of spirituality were so undermined and so spiritually infected. It's like a person who would have a foreign substance in his body, such as a drug addict, God forbid, that the moment he starts craving, he has no control over his function. Identically, our equilibrium of choice was so off because we were so influenced and inculcated with the impurities of Egypt. We had no balance any longer. We could no longer make choices between good and evil. Everything was heavily weighted towards the negative side. So the two things happened when we left Egypt. Firstly, we were physically freed from our masters. In addition, something miraculous happened. There was a spiritual purging of our systems, a detoxification of all the impurities of Egypt. As it says in Chazal, that if God would have redeemed us at that particular moment, we would have gone into spiritual oblivion. There's such a thing known as the 49 gates of spiritual impurity. That's the lowest one could fall to. If one goes beyond that point, you're at a point of no return. God had to take us out at that particular moment. God had no choice. Because God says after so many years, the Jews will leave Egypt with great wealth. And ultimately, as we will discuss, the great wealth, the ultimate great wealth, was the Torah at Sinai and being taken as God's chosen people. So when we speak about Mitzrayim gialtonu beis avodim b'tisonu, one is speaking about a physical redemption, and the other speaking about a spiritual redemption. Two things happened when we left Egypt. Physically, we were no longer in bondage, and also spiritually, we were free to function as beings of choice, to make the choice between good and evil. This is what happened. There's an opinion in the Talmud that the reason why we went into bondage was because Avraham asked a certain question, which was an inappropriate question. God says to Avraham, after he had said to him that although the stars say Avraham will not have a child, and Sarai will not have a child, however, Avraham will have a child, and Sarah will have a child. Avraham was an expert astrologer, and he saw the stars clearly. It was etched in stone. He was not meant to have a child, and neither was Sarai, his wife, meant to be the matriarch, and he the patriarch. So God says to Avraham, it's true. The human being known as Avraham will not have a child. And the woman known as Sarai will not have a child, but Avraham, with the hay added to his name, and Sarai, with the hay added to her name, you both will be parents of a child, of a son, who will be the future patriarch of the Jewish people. The Torah says, Avraham believed. He believed what God had said. Although we saw clearly in the stars, being an expert astrologer, that it's not meant to be, but God says it will happen. Despite the stars, because you will be Avraham, and she will be Sarah rather than Sarai. The Torah tells us he believed, he believed, and it was considered righteousness. Soon afterwards, immediately, almost the next sentence, God says, and the land of Canaan will be yours and your progeny after you for all time. Avraham asks a question. What is the question? But how do you know? How do I know it's going to happen? What happens if my children should fail? Would it be taken from them? How do I know we're going to inherit it? How do we know we'll be worthy enough to inherit it? God says the question was an inappropriate question. God says, when I said the land of Canaan will be yours and your progeny, I did not say it was contingent or conditional on anything. So what are you asking? But how do I know if my children should fail, they'll be removed from the land? That was considered a lack of trust. And because you had a lack of trust, a lack of faith, your children will be strangers in the land which is not theirs. They'll be enslaved, they'll be afflicted. 400 years. And then they will go out with great wealth.